Hey everyone, welcome back for today's podcast, which is all about encouraging more women at the leadership position. And how we do that is we bring a lot of women who has made the impact into their own field. And today we have invited who is a visionary leader and has shaped the success stories of Fortune 100 companies for over 4 decades. And she is currently executive coach and associate director for Ernst& Young's America's coaching practice, where she guides global and national leaders throughout their most pivotal business transitions. And as one of the only 2,200 master certified coaches worldwide, she brings elite expertise that has helped reshape communication and business strategies across industries. You know what? Also, if I love to speak, really more about her, but last thing which I really want to, introduce her by telling about her is that from Nielsen Marketing Research to HPO, she is not just designed the strategies, she's also turned the political crisis into breakthrough success stories. Get ready for today unfiltered conversation about what's next, exploring new horizon for leaders at the peak of their careers. Please meet Cheryl Procter-Rogers. Thank you so much, Shari, for coming today.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much, Imani, for the invitation.
Thank you. You know, I really want to ask, the first question is, before that, really want to say, we all start, our careers with that, dream into our mind that we want to reach at the top. And what interesting is that once the leaders, they reach at the top, they think, oh my God, now what's next? So, which, brings us today's, first question with the exploration. For leaders at the top of their game, what are some of the most common challenges or uncertainties they face when considering what's next in their careers?
Oh, absolutely. And so what we find is that many leaders will start to identify their total brand with a role. And so that role or that organization becomes a part of their brand. And certainly if they've been in the role for any uh, period of time, they'll also start to feel like that role is defining them. And so they have a fear of losing their sense of relevance and and maybe even influence because of the roles that they were in. It afforded them access to information, and they were invited to participate in some key strategy meetings. And so there's that fear that this will all go away in a new role or as they transition out of an organization. And then there's that undefined, daunting feeling, especially when they're not sure of what is ahead for them, that they've
Mhm.
done the work. And so they don't have a clear path forward. And that can be pretty, um, can give a sense of uneasiness.
Yeah. Sharon, would you love to give, without taking the name, some example, like, where a leader has come to you and you have seen on their, like, from their conversation, oh my gosh, Cheryl, now what's next at my leadership role?
Oh, sure. I can think of an executive in particular who had spent many years at an organization and was actually downsized out of the organization and just had never even considered another outcome for themselves. They only thought about, um, they just imagined the retirement party, and they had not um, created a foundation to be able to pivot quickly into a new chapter in their lives. And so by helping them do that reflection and think about what may be next, it was really important to give them that sense of confidence and have a plan as they were transitioning into a new organizational role.
And Cheryl, when you were sharing this example, especially talking about the retirement, I just recently had a conversation with somebody, and at the age of 50, she took the volunteer retirement. And she's like, okay, fine. I took the volunteer retirement. And at that point of time, a lot of people is like, this is not the age of retirement, firstly. Yeah. And another, listening, she got also like, okay, fine. Now, what is next the coming year she has to do? So yeah,
Mhm.
that thought is always, like making her to think, okay, I don't have the clarity what we have to do in the next 10 years. Yeah.
Absolutely. And see, Hermione, this whole idea of retirement,
Yeah.
because we're living longer, we're more healthy, um, that's a moving target. And I like to reframe that and say, just what's next for you?
Yeah.
What's the next chapter in this life that you've carved out for yourself? And so when we think about someone in their 50s and they're
Mhm.
using the word retirement, we immediately go to the idea that, oh, they'll just be waking up at noon and kind of going with the flow of whatever they're feeling. And actually, at any age, there is a need to have a sense of purpose
Yeah.
and to have created a plan for that next chapter. And I always say the only thing worse, Hermione, than a bad plan is
Yeah.
no plan.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for sharing this. You know, at the start, we all push, to climb to the top of the organization, but once leaders get there, path ahead sometimes, become not clear, like which we were talking it right now with few examples. So here is what we are, would love to learn with your experience, how those leaders, can begin to navigate these unknowns with clarity and confidence, especially when their next steps, may be less defined.
Well, I think it's really important to go back to the basics. And if a leader has not done work around their values, I encourage them to do that work. And I have an exercise that I encourage them to do. And I would be happy to share that if you think it'd be.
Oh, that would be really great. Yeah, please.
So I ask them to list without, any reflection time, to list their top 5 values. And these are the values that they believe are the most important and will help them to um, be centered on what's important in their personal and professional life. So, no code switching, no set of values for the personal life, and then
Mhm.
another set for your work life. And the reason I asked for 5 is because it really ties into the personal brand, how you want people to experience you. And so, if asked the question, what's most important to you? These are the top 5 that you would list,
Mm.
all more than 5 values. But when we start to think about our personal brand and how we communicate and how we want others to experience us, this creates a really a blueprint for
Mhm.
how we want to be intentional in our lives. And so written down those top 5. And then the
Mhm.
next step in the activity is to use a search engine, Google, Bing, whatever the search engine of choice is, and type in values list. Now,
Mhm.
there's thousands out there. Coach Cheryl or Leader Cheryl doesn't have a particular list that I think is important for you to use. The
Mhm.
idea is just to start to become familiar with all of the different values that are on these lists and to just go through them in a reflective space. And if a value hits you and you think, wow, I didn't have that on the list, but
Mm,
in this next chapter, I want to have that, front and center in my life. And
mm,
so you'll do that, and you may keep the five that you wrote down spontaneously, or you might make changes based on
mm,
your search. And the next step in the exercise is to reach out to five or six people in your life, someone you've known a long time, short period of time, someone from your personal life, from your professional life. Now, this is not going to pass the statistics test,
yeah.
but it's just a way to gather more data to help as you're starting to think about your values. So this is not, you're going to ask them a question, but you're not going to do this through a text or,
Mm-hmm.
through email. You're going to be having a conversation like you and I are having. And, you
Yeah.
say, I was listening to this coach on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to do this values exercise, and ask the person to share with you what they believe are your top five values.
Oh.
Now, if someone says, oh, let me think about it and get back to you, say, nope, nope, I want
Mm-hmm.
to know what comes up for you without deep thinking. Oh, do you mean at work, or it doesn't matter? Just tell me what you believe my top five values are. Now, they may ask you to help them define values, or they might even ask what's on your list. And you can
Mm-hmm.
assure them you're not going to tell them what's on your list. And it doesn't matter if it's a true value or not, because
Mm-hmm.
anything that they share is going to be useful.
Yeah.
Now, if you hear something that just strikes you as really odd, watch your body language and your tone, and just, Cheryl, can you say more about empathy and how that shows up for me?
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is then to think about your own personal evolution with your values. And what changed from the initial list that you wrote with, it being very spontaneous? What was your growth and how you were thinking after the search? And then when you got this input from others,
Mm-hmm.
changed? What gave you pause? And then
Wow.
settle on those values, and then start intentional about them in a way that will be useful. And so when you think about, well, what do you mean being useful? What am I going to be hearing that signals that you're living these values? Um,
Mm-hmm.
what are the decisions that you're making that are in line with these values? So, values are so foundational to our decision making. And if that work hasn't been done, I absolutely encourage um, those who are seeking what's next to do that work. And then next, I ask them to consider three buckets.
Oh, okay.
The first bucket is, what is it that you'd like to be doing more of?
Mm-hmm.
Personal, professional life. No caveats. Well, I'd be doing more of this if I had $1 million. No, no caveats. And then the second bucket is, what would you like to be doing less of?
Mm.
And no caveats. And to even consider things that you're really good at, but that you've decided, I just don't want to do this kind of work anymore. Or I just don't want to do this aspect of the work anymore. Or I just don't want to do laundry ever again. So
Yeah.
that, but the most important bucket is that third bucket. Where are the opportunities for growth and development? And what are the things that you can put into that last bucket that will bring
Mm-hmm.
joy, put you in flow.
Mm. You know what? When you were talking, no, Sharon, I was into my self-discovery journey, very frankly. I was
Mhm.
trying to think my values. I was trying to think, okay, what I have to put into my buckets. Do I have to change something? So I was going, when you were speaking it, I was going to my whole, self-introspection journey, very frankly. Yes. Thank you so much for, sharing this thing. Because this is something, I really love. When I was not doing it earlier, the self-introspection, self-awareness, I wasn't aware about, I would say, this part of the world. When I started doing it, it's very, very powerful. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. Sharon, as leaders shift from being builders and drivers to the mentors and legacy creators, how can they, transition effectively into this new role? Because at that age, they start loving to do the mentoring role because they feel they can help a lot of people around them.
well, I think first is to be intentional.
Okay.
And many times, leaders, especially those with a lot of experience, and
Mhm.
they tend to feel like, oh, I can wing it. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I would encourage them to pause, reflect, and be intentional about what is next for them and what legacy they want to leave behind. And and then reflect on the impact
Mhm.
that they want to leave. Some may have several years, some may have several months. It doesn't matter when you're transitioning. Thinking about what is your legacy? What is it that you would like others to have experienced of you? And what impact would you like to have not only on those who have experienced you, but also on your organization?
Yeah.
And then I think what's really important, Hermione, is really redefining what success looks like for you.
Very well said, actually. Yeah.
Because we've been on this path, right? Um,
Mm.
and some of it has been conquer and control and really leaning into our strengths and sometimes sharing that knowledge, but not with the intent as you're speaking of as legacy creators. And so when you start to redefine what success looks like, it's no
Mhm.
longer, quantitative. It becomes qualitative, right?
Yeah.
And how many people have you mentored that have gone on to a successful career? What impact have you had speaking to groups or writing articles and
Mm.
sharing your wisdom? So
Yeah.
these are the ways to start to have some thoughts about how you can actually redefine what success looks like. And then you're going to have to build new skills
Mm. True.
because now you're moving from that coordinator, manager, leadership role into more of a coaching role, which means you're going to have to be listening a lot more than you're speaking.
Mm.
You're going to be mentoring versus direct.
Yeah.
And so those skills are can certainly be developed, but it's going to be important. And then when you start thinking about the organization, what systems, programs, how can you impact the culture of the
Mm.
organization? And so, as you can see, just having those as goals and being intentional about them can help to create a legacy.
That's true. And I think, many of them, just initially not able to think about their legacy. But when they start seeing, okay, what is the impact they want to make around the society, around them, and that makes them to give a direction of what is something I'm going to leave behind. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that is so important because, you know, many times I'll hear a leader say, I just don't
Mm,
have time. And then I
mm,
remind them, you know, 7 days in a week, right? And
yeah.
so let's say you're working 60 hours, you're sleeping 65 hours, or, you know, somewhere in that vicinity. That leaves you 7.5 hours a day. Okay,
Wow, Cheryl has done exact calculation.
so you know you've got to eat, you've got to
Yeah.
shower, take personal care, right? Um,
Yeah.
and then if you're doing the personal care, you're going to be working out or doing those things. So, okay, I'll give you three. So, what are you doing with that other 4 hours? And these
Mm,
are the times when you can take that time back if you're
yeah.
finding that it's not really being productive and really focus on yourself.
Yeah. Cheryl, leaders, often, struggle between, protecting what they have built and daring to build something new. So, which
Mhm.
brings us, with this question, like how do you guide leaders to balance preserving their existing achievements with taking bold new risks?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to take you back to my buckets.
Okay.
And most importantly, that third bucket.
Mm-hmm.
What, you know, spend some time reflecting on your talents. Hermione, many times we confuse talents with strengths. Talents are
Yes.
what you came to this earth with. And I always encourage my clients go back to first grade. What were the things that you were doing unprompted? And your parents were saying, okay, it's time to eat. Stop doing that. Um, and what was your sensibility? Were you a loner or were you one who had lots of friends? Um, when you were, if you played sports, what was your role? Um, were you did you always find yourself being captain, or were you always the negotiator, the one that was more empathetic and was that moral compass of the group. So reflecting on those talents will really play into um, creating this balance because talents then we start to take maybe one or two and it's usually identified by those adults around us, right? You know, your teachers in school say, "Oh my gosh, you're amazing in math." So they kind of push you in that direction. Or you're an amazing storyteller. Write something for us. And so you just want to start thinking about the talents that you didn't develop into strengths, that you didn't go to school and get a degree in or find a role that leaned into one or two of your talents. And then you've got these talents sitting on the
Mm,
sideline saying, hey, remember me? You were born with me. I gave you joy. I gave you
mm,
pleasure, but you didn't nurture me, but I'm still here. And so those are the kinds of things that you also want to be thinking about with that third bucket. What are the
mm,
natural talents that I haven't used? And how can I leverage? Remember that second bucket. What are the
mhm,
things I don't want to do anymore, even though they're strengths? And so what are the strengths that you really want to lean into? And to really create that opportunity to just be in flow
yeah.
more than not. And you might have to step outside of your comfort zone and take a little risk, but it's going to be a strategic risk. I'm asking
Mm,
for um, those individuals who are seeking that balance to start thinking strategically about how they might step outside of their comfort zone to practice something new while protecting those non-negotiables, those
mhm.
core values that they've decided are important. Does that get to your question?
Yeah, and Shelley, when you're talking about the comfort zone, I think it's one of the biggest hindrance which comes on the way to think, okay, should I go ahead and do this or not? Take a risk or not? Yeah.
Yes. And the easiest way to get clarity on that
Hmm.
is to go back to those values.
Yeah, true.
What is really
Mm,
important to me?
mm.
And and think about those buckets.
I know when you're talking about the values, sometimes when I design any product or service for my brand, sometimes I feel maybe I'm diverting it, but then I think about again the mission and the values. It makes me think it has to be aligned. Yes.
Absolutely. And that speaks to your self-awareness and the insights that you have about yourself. Because what we find is that when we start to stray further and further away from those core values, we're just
Hmm.
uncomfortable and we're not sure-footed. We just lack that confidence to take that
Mm.
next step, and stepping outside of our comfort zone feels more risky than
Yes.
a new adventure.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much. Because you know what, when you are talking, Cheryl, I think it's good. I'm going to do the self-reflection journey today. Yeah, thank you so much for so many insights today. In your experience, what patterns have you observed in how successful, executives handle the psychological aspects of transitioning at the peak of their careers?
Oh my gosh, it's a mix, right? It's a
Yeah.
mix of excitement. It's you've got excitement, you've got anxiety, right? Because this is the unknown. Is this going to work out? Um, and they really want to stick the landing, right?
Yes.
They're launching into something new as they transition. And what I have seen is sometimes there's this over preparation and over analyzing. Now, I do want you to do your due diligence. I want you to
Hmm.
think about how this aligns with your values. I want you to think about what it is you'd like to be doing more of, less of, and where do you really want to start to grow and expand. Um, and so, how is it that you'll know when you're over preparing? Having
Hmm.
a personal cabinet of advisors that are part of your life, that can serve as a sounding board for you, that can um, signal. Cheryl, I think you've over analyzed this. I think you're over
Hmm.
preparing. I think you're ready. Let's
Yes.
leave. Um, and also, some of the pitfalls are seeking external validation.
Mm.
I'm encouraging those who are looking outside for, am I right? Am I okay? Am I doing this right? Am I making the right decision?
Yeah.
To just be self reflective and tap into that inner coach and know for sure that you've done the homework, this aligns with your values, this is where you want to go. And if it doesn't work out, you'll have a
Hmm.
plan B. Because I always want, like, remember I said earlier, the only
Yeah.
thing worse than a bad plan is no plan. But every plan should also have a contingency because we
Yes.
want to plan for all of the possible outcomes and not just the outcome that we want. And then I would say, finally, create a growth mindset.
Mm.
And so that you're always actively learning and growing and developing. And so that third bucket is always filled with so many things, hopefully, some you may never get to because you're
Mm,
always thinking about how you can grow and develop and learn. And, and all of
mhm.
these things that we've been talking about, it's just a natural human condition when we're making any kind of change.
Yeah. I think when you're talking, Shailen, about third bucket, in my life, when I started just doing out of my just job of corporate responsibilities and thinking about those growth and development, I realized that, oh my God, this bucket will keep filling throughout the life. It's just a part of a journey. Yeah.
Yes. And then you'll decide when the time is right
Yeah,
to pursue something that's in that third bucket.
true, true. Yeah. And with this, the next question would love to know is like, when leaders reach the height of their careers, how can they redefine success, in a way that feels more meaningful and aligned with their legacy?
Oh, I think we've talked about it a little earlier.
Yes.
It's that reflection time, just being introspective and thinking about what truly matters
Mm,
and getting back to those values. And and what we're also doing during this time in our careers is really shifting from achievement to fulfillment. So it's not about, the next role or
mhm,
um, the next raise. It's really about what am I getting from this role?
mhm.
What am I able to leave as a legacy? And then you'll find that your priorities start to change, right?
Yeah.
So the things that are most important is, well, what impact am I making?
Hmm.
How am I bringing value? I want to spend more time with my family or my personal passions, things
Yeah.
that, now that I've done this work around my values and my talents, I used to love to paint.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to go get some paints and some brushes and an easel and just see where this takes me. You know, I often recommend or suggest to my clients to think about how they might redefine themselves
Yeah.
and how exciting that can be. That this is not, you know, uh, an ending or, a cutoff. And
Hmm.
now it's like, okay, now I'm no longer doing that. What am I doing? But that this is an evolution
Yeah.
of you, and that by leaving something behind is not a suggestion that you're somehow um, weak or no longer relevant. You're going to be more relevant in this next stage because it's going to be alive and it's going to be fresh. And I can't stress enough the importance of really living those values. You
I
might,
can correlate, Cheryl, because the few years back, the which were I used to think as an achievements. Now that has become as a part of a fulfillment, very frankly. Yeah.
yes,
And even I remember with this, like with somebody in the past, I was doing the collaboration. And for me, those were the things I want to achieve, okay, and reach at that place. But for her, maybe this much it was a part of a fulfillment, maybe.
yes. And
Yeah,
the podcast that you're doing, this
yeah,
is a way to fulfill some things for you.
yeah,
And and what we also find is it's less about us individually and
yeah,
more about how we can help shape the world or shape our community or
yeah,
shape something bigger than ourselves.
yeah. That's very true. Yeah. And Cheryl, you have worked with leaders who have already mastered their field. Okay. So, what's the most surprising advice you have given them about writing their next chapter? Especially, when others expect them to keep aiming for the next, big title.
Yeah, I invite those leaders to really think about what when they first were launching their career or
Mm-hmm.
when they were first coming into this C-suite role, what were their thoughts and aspirations? And then I asked them, did you believe that when you got here that this was going to be permanent and that you'd be here driven and working at this high level
Mm-hmm.
until you were, I always say, until you get the two-finger tap on the shoulders, like, okay, I think it's time. I think it's for for you to, sunset into something else. And they always answer no.
Mm-hmm.
But why am I sitting here paralyzed? And so those are the things that we have to consider when we're thinking about, pretty much
Mm-hmm.
um, we get to that peak or we've always dreamed from the time we were an intern of um, becoming a partner or becoming CEO of this company. And now that
Mm-hmm.
we're here, we don't want to let it go. And remember, we talked earlier about how it becomes part of how they define themselves and
Mm-hmm.
who are they without this title.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I encourage those leaders to think about and to start helping them think about the everything that they've learned. Because I'm encouraging them not to forget everything you already know.
Mm.
How can you take that knowledge, that wisdom, that way of leading and transfer it into something else?
Yeah. I think the feeling of detachment from that particular role, which gives them power. Sometimes for few of them, it's very difficult to have that feeling.
Yes, it's a detachment that
Mm-hmm.
needs to happen. And it's a process. It's not a light switch. So
Mm-hmm.
I encourage leaders to begin that process when they first get into that role, to
True.
start thinking about, and sometimes they'll look at me with side eye. It's like, I just got here. I worked so hard. And now you're asking me to think about how I'm going to exit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because I want you to have a plan for yourself
Mm-hmm.
that includes redefining yourself and detaching yourself from this company or this title.
Yeah, true. And Sherry, the last question I would love to ask you is, everyone loves telling successful leaders what's their next move should be. So let's
Mhm.
explore what are some common myths that leaders encounter about, changing directions or stepping back, and how do you help them embrace this new phase?
Well, first we have to explore their beliefs. Do
Mm,
they believe that stepping back is a sign of weakness or that somehow they've failed? And if they believe that that is true, then
mm,
it is an emotional reaction for them to even consider stepping back. And it is not a sign of weakness,
mm,
nor is it an indication of failure. As a matter of fact,
mhm.
it's something I like to talk about a lot. It's an indication of a very soft landing.
True.
And you think about how quickly you pivot from one thing to another. And some feel that, oh, it means I'm abandoning.
Mm-hmm.
If I leave, think about all of the people who have come to depend on me. I will
Yeah.
be abandoning all of these
Mm-hmm.
people, and they've come to uh, depend on me and look to my counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha, I promise you, if within 30 days they'll be on to the new leader, and they'll have fond
Yeah.
memories, um, but things do move on. And so the
Mm-hmm.
idea that if you leave, the whole world will end, even
Mm-hmm.
in an entrepreneurial situation where the owner and visionary for the small and maybe now large business is thinking about that. It's going back to, what's your succession plan?
Mm-hmm.
How have what do you, how do you want your legacy to be? Have what impact do you want your legacy to have? Have
Yeah.
you started to share your wisdom and insights with others who can step into this role seamlessly? And, you know, I just encourage them to think about all that they have learned, all that they have accomplished,
Mm-hmm.
and what are the endless possibilities for them, for themselves, going and pivoting to a new chapter and reframing their sense of identity, their sense of success.
Success.
And how do we move quickly
Mm-hmm.
from that achievement mindset to fulfillment?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we maintain a growth mindset so that this doesn't feel like an ending that we need to have a funeral for, but that this is a celebration, and that there are so many wins and milestones to celebrate,
Yeah.
and that we're able to um, really find that joy and get into flow in just a new way.
Yeah. Sherry, when you were talking about this, one of the, like, I would say, a lot of when women leaders come to me for coaching, not towards their professional life, that I'm saying, towards their personal life. Sometimes, when I ask them, okay, why don't you learn this to grow yourself? They say, oh my God, we can't give the time because firstly, we are devoting the time to our professional life, and then personal life also not able to get time. But I sometimes tell them that do not give so much importance to that, that without you, the things can't be done at home. And they just, have that always that feeling without them, the things can't move at home. And that because of that, the whole their work-life balance sometimes, become, like give them a stress, pressure, and they can't detach from that feeling. Yeah,
And again, it goes back to those values. What's
yeah,
most important in this chapter?
yeah.
When my girls were really young,
Mm-hmm.
what was important to me was setting boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
being resourceful, and having those that value of being resourceful and finding ways to find um, I don't know if you can ever really balance, but
Yeah,
you can certainly carve out um, a pie, if you will,
yeah,
on how much, what slice of time are you going to use, devote to your personal growth? What and how do you keep yourself accountable
yeah,
to any commitments that you make around time? We already talked about that 7.5 hours. So
yeah.
we know that there is time, that we make time for the things that are important. And so how do we create those boundaries
Mm,
so that we are not victims of burnout? How do we avoid confirmation bias? Only associating with people, only reading material, only hiring individuals that look and think like us.
Mm-hmm.
How do we stay just present in the world around us
Mm-hmm.
and always doing that, having that time to self-reflect, to
Yeah.
remind ourselves of what's really important here
Mm-hmm.
and keeping ourselves accountable to doing that reflection. And the personal cabinet is also a way to do that. And so when you start thinking about balance, I think the most important thing is to think about your career plan, your personal plan, and what are the things that you need to do to set priorities now for the future life that you want, and just to hold yourself accountable and have self-compassion, because there's going to be times when
True.
you're not able to hold the commitments that you've made, but to reflect on why. Did I not hold these commitments because
Mm-hmm.
I started to feel like I might lose my relevance if I didn't attend all of these events? Or
Mm-hmm.
is it something going on within me that prevents me from staying true to my values and to my plan?
Shirley, just last point, want to say, when I say work-life balance, people say, I think people sometimes start comparing that with other, what is written in the newspaper or maybe blogs or maybe on social media and what sometimes other people say. Maybe for somebody, I like for an example, somebody I was coaching and she says, I want to have a work-life balance. But she says, that I really love my work. I would love to devote my work life, like rather than, like personal life, I want to devote. But work life is something I really enjoy. I really am passionate about it. If you're really passionate about it, if you really like, it's okay that if you're giving more time to your work then, because there that is giving you happiness. It's not necessary that you want both. Yes, because if you feel you are stressed or burned out because of you're not maintaining that balance, that is a different factor. But if you're enjoying it, then why not? Yeah.
And so, I mean, we can have a high
Yeah.
from something that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And so, there are individuals who might work 10 hours a day and
Hmm.
feel like, I love it. I love working 10 hours a day. It's
Yes.
it's wonderful. I'm energized. Um, and I'm getting rewarded for this.
Yes.
And then I should put this to music and hit the play button, Mon.
You know,
But go
sorry,
back
yeah,
to
please say,
your
yeah. Yeah.
values. What is really important? What
Mm.
is your personal and professional goals?
Yeah.
How are others experiencing you?
Mm.
And is everyone experiencing you as this driven, focused on achievement person? And is that how you want to show up in the world? Or do you want to be seen as an empathetic individual
Mm.
in your personal and professional life? Do you want to be seen as someone who collaborates and is open-minded? Or, you get to choose.
True.
But sometimes we can get mixed signals from,
Mm.
our belief system.
Yeah.
So if we believe that success is measured solely by our achievements, then we're going to be focusing on those achievements as a way to define our success.
That's truly well said. Yeah. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for giving so many insights, the real life examples, and the methods which you follow during your C-suite development and coaching. Just want to just check with you anything which you want to say at last for the leaders who is looking for what's next.
So, so I would say do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Find the time every week at least 20 minutes a week
Mm-hmm.
to do the work. Be clear on your values. Reflect and know your talents. Think about your strengths and
Mm-hmm.
how you came to those strengths and what talents are sitting there waiting to be
Mm-hmm.
nurtured and utilized. Look at your personal cabinet. Who are those people around you who can serve as your North Star to help you keep focused on that North Star that you set for yourself? You want to have someone on that personal cabinet who is a plays devil advocate to get you thinking differently. How are you a part of a larger community?
Mm-hmm.
How are you giving back? How are you gaining insights about yourself? And what are your capabilities? That growth mindset, always learning, always wanting to be a step ahead and being a part of the world around you and realizing the gaps that you might have in your skill set or your knowledge. And so when you really focus on you, you become a
Mm-hmm.
better mother, a better
Yeah.
friend, better wife, and certainly a better leader.
Very well said, Cheryl, because a lot of people, when they see that we are focusing on ourselves, they think, oh, maybe we are too ambitious or self-focused. They don't realize it. If we are happy from inside, fulfilled, it helps other people also around us, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming today and giving me this opportunity, to ask you the insightful questions. And, I hope when the people will listen, it really brings them also insights and they will also be get that into that self-introspection journey, which I went through, very frankly. And, last I want to say, that reaching the top is not the end of the story. It's all about just the beginning of a new one. Yeah. And any, like, listeners who would love to, you maybe, tag me and share it on the LinkedIn, please do that. If any questions regarding this podcast, please do that. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming today.